It's time for today's travel and cruise industry news. With the latest from travel and cruises around the world, here's your host, Chillie Falls.
Good morning and welcome to a special Saturday morning edition of Travel and Cruise Industry News. On this, the 24th day of September 2022, Florida, get ready. And Fiona is roaring in Canada. This is strictly going to be a look at weather, folks. That's the dominating and only real story in the cruise industry today. And what we got to look ahead to for the next few days. Today, by the way, folks, is National Cherries Jubilee Day. Not one of my favorites. But if you happen to like Cherries Jubilee, go out and find somebody that has Cherries Jubilee. Or maybe go to a restaurant that, has cherry pie. That's close. Cherries Jubilee Day. Still wonder who writes these things. If you're listening via the podcast, you're always welcome. You can access the podcast via my blog, which is accessadventure.net. I'm one of the few people out there that travels both solo and has accessibility issues. I consider myself mobility challenged as opposed to a full out handicapped, but still mobility challenged. So if you are via the podcast, feel free to take a look at the blog, which is primarily for accessibility issues. Or wherever you get your podcast from, all the big guys, just search for Travel and Cruise Industry News, and up pops the fat travel guy. Normally at this part of the program, I would be sharing some pictures and so forth of some of the Chillie's Cruises family that's out sailing right now. I will put that off until Monday on the regular broadcast so we can get to the news as quickly as possible. And again, we're going to look at 4 storms this morning, but 2 in particular. I'll be back with a look at those storms and what we can expect in the U.S. after a word from one of our network sponsors. All right, folks, back at it. Let's take a look first, the overall picture of the Atlantic Basin. As you'll see, there are actually 5 storms out there. One of them is minimal chance of development. That's the yellow X down in the middle. The other 4 are all worth mentioning today, and something that happened that you're really probably not familiar with that happened since I was on the air yesterday. But first, we got to look at Fiona. This is the current map of Fiona. By the way, right this instant, the center of Fiona is over Dumas Pond in Nova Scotia. Any of you that have been in Nova Scotia, especially eastern Nova Scotia, will be familiar with Dumas Pond. In this country, I would call it a lake, but it's a big pond. All right. The center of Fiona is crossing over eastern Nova Scotia. High winds, heavy rains will continue. And this, folks, because of the size of the storm, this is affecting not only Nova Scotia. It's affecting Newfoundland. It's affecting Prince Edward Island. It's affecting New Brunswick. It's even affecting some into eastern Quebec. This still is a humongous storm, much larger than the cone shows. Currently, it's 160 miles northeast of Halifax, Nova Scotia. Sustained winds are 90 miles an hour. Now, here's one thing that I don't have the answer to because somebody's going to ask it. Why do they call this now a post-tropical storm when it's still a hurricane? I don't know. I have not been able to find that one out because it is still at hurricane strength, but it's now called post-tropical Fiona. So post-tropical Fiona that's still hurricane strength is going to kick butt up there in the Northlands. Its present movement is north at 26 miles an hour. Central pressure is still 931, so I mean, it's the same as it would be if it was hurricane force winds. Anyway, the center of post-tropical cyclone Fiona is moving toward the north, 26 miles an hour. A slower north-northeast or northward motion is expected through tomorrow. The center of Fiona will move across eastern Nova Scotia and into the Gulf of St. Lawrence this morning, and then move across Labrador and over the Labrador Sea tomorrow. Although gradual weakening is forecast during the next couple of days, Fiona is expected to maintain hurricane force winds at least through this afternoon. Now, the other thing that's we have to talk about is the numerous cruise itineraries that have been affected by this storm. I mean, we've been talking about cruise itineraries down through the Caribbean to, St. Thomas and Tortola and the ports in Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, and of course, Turks and Caicos. Now you've got all of the fall. Look at the changing leaf cruises up and down the northeast coast of the United States and into Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, down the St. Lawrence Seaway as far as Quebec and Montreal. And there's ships in various stages through all of this that have kind of gotten stuck. Many of the ships, I'm sure, escaped yesterday, but because it funneled through such a small trough to get to Nova Scotia, after inside of Bermuda, some of these ships are probably going through some really rough seas and conditions not really expected on a cruise ship. I'm just not entirely sure. I'm sure they're going to survive it because the ships today are so safe. But still, it's going to be unpleasant for a lot of passengers, I would think, today, tomorrow. Hopefully, some of the ships have gotten around the storm and are out to sea, even if they've canceled itineraries, canceled port of calls. That's going to happen. It's going to happen with some other storms we're going to talk about here today as well. All right, that's Fiona. It'll be good to see Fiona go away. That's been a brutal storm. Gaston, you notice the direction is a little different. Tropical storm Gaston is out over the western and central over the western and central Atlantic and the Azores, and it should diminish by this evening, become post-tropical this later today or this evening. So this should go away. It should. But keep in mind, by this turn to the south, it could be getting into slightly warmer waters, and that could, that's a big C, could change things. Currently, it's about 80 miles west of Fail Island in the central Azores. Maximum sustained winds are 50 miles an hour. Present movement is west-southwest at 9. pressure is 999 millibars. The center of Tropical Storm Gaston was moving toward the west-southwest. A turn toward the west is anticipated later today, expected to become post-tropical this evening. Well, we're still going to have to watch this one, folks. I differ a little bit with the weather forecasters on this one, because I think this might stick around another day or two before it goes away. And it's not going to affect anything. I could definitely be wrong on that. They could be right. All right, this is the one that really caused a little bit of difference. And you'll notice this is a very odd direction as well. Now, we were talking about Hermine as being the one that's over here heading for Florida. Well, what happened yesterday about the time I got off the air, that we had 9, which the one over closest to us. About the time I got off the air, tropical depression, it got strength enough to be a tropical depression off the coast of Africa, and that became 10. Then the next step is to be a named storm, which it has to have a circular motion, and it has to be greater than 39 miles per hour wind speed. 10 reached that level before 9, so 10 became the next named storm, which is Hermine. 9, shortly after that, hit that level and became the next name, which was Ian. So that's what the confusion to some was, because when we were talking that it would probably be Hermine, that's 9, there wasn't a 10. So it was a little bit confusing, but that's the way they do things. There are certain levels before they go to the next step. And the next step was reached first by 10, then by 9. Okay. In the meantime, Tropical Storm Hermine, heavy rains are expected through the weekend for the Canary Islands. Flash flooding is possible in higher elevations. She's currently 360 miles northeast of Cabo Verde Islands, maximum sustained winds of 40 miles an hour, moving due north at 10 miles an hour. And central pressure is 1,002 millibars. The center of Tropical Storm Hermine was moving toward the north. This motion is expected to continue through tonight. A turn to the northeast should occur by late Sunday, followed by a turn to the northwest by tomorrow or Sunday night. Weakening is expected to commence tonight, and Hermine should become a remnant low on Monday. So this unusual direction that this storm is going in now, moving to the north where it is, as opposed to moving west, is probably going to just kill it. So that should happen by Monday. Now, what could be the co-main story today, and the equally as important a story as Fiona is to our friends up north, is Tropical Storm Ian. This is the current most likely path of Ian. This is the one that I say, Florida, get ready. Ian is strengthening while moving westward over the central Caribbean. Hurricane conditions are possible for the Cayman Islands by early Monday. Currently, she's about 315 miles southeast of Kingston, Jamaica, which puts her about 600 miles east-southeast of Grand Cayman. Currently, the maximum sustained winds are 45 miles an hour. She's moving west at 14. Pressure is still a little to the high side. It's 1,003, but that's going to start dropping like a stone. The center of Tropical Storm Ian is moving west-northwestward, and that's expected to continue until tomorrow. A turn toward the northwest is forecast late tomorrow, followed by a north-northwestern turn by late Monday. On the forecast track, the center of Ian is forecast to move over the central Caribbean today, pass southwest of Jamaica on Sunday, and pass near or over Cayman Islands Sunday night. Early Monday, Ian will probably cross western Cuba. And remember, western Cuba is not the mountainous portion of Cuba. That's unlikely to affect the strength of the storm at all, or if it does, just minorly affect it. The big problem, folks, is the strengthening that is expected once it starts turning to the north, and either just before or after it passes Grand Cayman. The forecasters are calling for rapid intensification, which means it could be a major hurricane of questionable strength, 3, 4. Nobody said 5 yet, but at least 3 or 4 by the time it reaches the Keys and Florida. So, Florida, get ready. You guys are familiar with what to do. You need to have your routes figured out your areas, if you're in flood prone areas, if they get evacuated, you need to know where you're going. You need to do all the normal things, boarding up and getting ready for it that you're used to. You got today and tomorrow to do it, because by Monday, you could start having some weather. All right. Clearly, by tomorrow sometime, Ian will be a hurricane. And clearly, unless something major happens, she's coming right for Florida. And as you can see from the cone, almost the entire state is right in the crosshairs. So, and it depends on how much this spreads out as to how much, it can affect Yucatan. Obviously, it's going to affect it some. The Gulf Coast, it's going to affect it some. The remainder of Cuba, Jamaica, you're going to have high surf, undertows, winds, lots of rain. The whole shooting match. Again, we were lucky in the early part of the hurricane season. It's getting even with us now. So, my friends in Florida, watch out. This one's coming right for you. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Let me jump over and see who's with us. I will take time to do that. Katie's with us. Mike's with us. Hi, Mike. Hi, Katie. Yeah, Katie, this thing could get to you up there in Orlando. Hot Air Tom's with us. He's over there on the boat. He's on the Prima. He's supposed to be in well, I'll save that story for Monday, but Hot Air Tom didn't get the suite that he was supposed to have. That's a whole nother story. He had to change rooms, and then got in trouble for not doing the muster drill that he did to the original room. So we'll talk about that on Monday. After Kirkwall was canceled due to storms, hope Halifax doesn't get canceled. Well, that's going to depend on how much damage there is today. I have not heard any damage reports from Halifax yet, because they're still getting the back end of this. This thing has been heavily loaded to the south and east of the storm, so Halifax is still getting nailed. And probably will throughout a good bit of the day. So it's going to be tomorrow before we know anything from Halifax, I would think. Of course, I will stay on top of this all weekend, folks. and I'll just come back and do a quick live like this if necessary. Storms that far north are out of tropic, hence the term post-tropical. Okay, that makes a little bit of sense. But still, to me, it's still a hurricane. Man, if it's over the threshold for hurricanes, I still call it a hurricane. I don't care if it's in the North Pole. So, Nikki's with us. Hi, Nikki. Yeah, Jacksonville, possibility. We just don't know how strong this storm's going to be. We don't know when and where it's going to hit Florida yet. We don't know the direction specifically, but boy, it sure is narrowing down to look out Florida. Bonnie's with us. My left knee hurt. My big toe hurts. That means we're going to have weather. Yeah, probably wet and windy. Yeah, Bonnie, I'm afraid you definitely, you need to back down the hatches. So, it's not looking pretty for Florida, guys. And of course, all you guys that are scheduled for cruises this weekend, and it just you can't count on anything happening. Everything's is liable to change, depending on when it's going to get to Southern Florida and Miami. I mean, you could have entire cruises that get canceled. They might try. I don't know. You don't know what's going to happen until it happens. Just everybody be on guard and stay in touch with your travel agent, or your cruise lines, because everything the next probably week is likely to change on almost every cruise from the U.S. Just except maybe the West Coast. It's just going to be one of those weeks, folks. It's nothing to get upset about. It's just going to happen, and make the best of it. That's one of the prices we pay for cruising this time of year, is you run this risk. Of course, you've also probably gotten bargain prices this time of year. So anyway, Bonnie says, I was on a Canadian cruise and had to cancel Halifax due to a nor'easter. Wasn't considered post-tropical storm. Yeah, that's it's weird, some of the rules. But anyway, they'll call it post-tropical. I'll still call it a hurricane until it gets below the threshold. That's me. When it gets to 73 miles an hour, I'll call it something besides a hurricane. So Bonnie says, I'm always prepared. Hurricane impact windows, doors, new roof, enough canned food to last a year, plus flashlights, batteries, radios, battery operated TV. Good, Bonnie, because I know for you, moving, it would be tough. I understand that, as it would be for me. But you've taken the steps. You're ready. I understand. It's clearly, if it starts heading for you where you are, you'll be in all of our thoughts. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. I'll stay on top of this over the weekend, guys. If anything major changes, I'll come back on numerous times if necessary. I'm not going anywhere this weekend, so I'll be right here. That's going to wrap me up for today. Thanks for being with me. As always, folks, stay safe, stay healthy, think about cruising, and hopefully one day soon we'll all get together on the high seas. Later, y'all.
I regularly post videos on all facets of the travel and cruise industry, so if you'd like to keep up with the latest in cruise ships, ports of call, cruises themselves, Chillie chats, and travel and cruise industry news, just hit the little subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, hit the bell notification so you'll be notified when a new video is up or we go live. This video was produced by Chillie's Cruises.